you ever notice how your body learns faster than your mind? How a few rounds of punishment you could not predict begin to teach your shoulders to lower before the day even starts? How your breath shrinks by a quiet degree when you approach tasks that used to feel simple, and how the space between intention and action fills with a dense, invisible fog. Do you notice how that fog makes even open doors look locked? You reach for the handle, pause, and tell yourself a story that sounds reasonable. Now's not the right time. The system won't allow it. I'll try when things settle down. And then you move on, carrying a little more proof that trying doesn't pay. You have been trained, not by wisdom, but by randomness, to stop investing effort. The lesson is brutal and efficient. When outcomes detach from actions, the nervous system conserves energy by withdrawing initiative. This is learned helplessness. Its genius is that it feels like realism while it steals your future. Think of the first place you learned it. Maybe at a dinner table where approval arrived like weather. Bright one evening, thunderous the next. So you learned to tiptoe through your own home as if it were a minefield. Maybe inside a school where grading rubbed like sandpaper against a teacher's moods. So you learned to guess instead of think. Maybe in a workplace where the target moved after every quarter and the manager's praise expired faster than the ink on your performance plan. Wherever you learned it, the arithmetic was simple. Action did not predict reward. So the body wrote a policy the mind never signed, but obeys. Do less, feel less, expect less. Then you met its twin, control theater. The meeting with 10 dashboards and no decisions. The policy that multiplies forms without multiplying outcomes. The committee that values the ritual of alignment more than the reality of delivery. Bureaucracies rarely announce that they prefer compliant behavior to creative results. They simply reward compliance on Friday and evaluate creative results next year, if ever. The signal is clear to anyone who wishes to keep their job without suffering. Be busy in public, be careful in email, be early to sign up sheets, and never ask why the work exists if the form has already been issued. If you point to the emptiness, someone points to the process and says, "Look how much we care." If you point to the process, someone points to the policy and says, "Look how much we're doing." Meanwhile, the graph you were hired to move looks back at you with the indifference of a stone. And when the institution wants you to surrender without feeling like you surrendered, it offers you multiple bad options. You can accept the delay or accept the fee. You can keep your role without the raise or take the raise in a new role with no support. You can submit the deliverable without access, or you can escalate and be marked as difficult. Choice, technically. Surrender, functionally. This is how systems make convenience masquerade as necessity. This is how apathy is installed as a default setting. Soon your calendar fills with acts of compliance. Your spine learns to bend at keywords. Your vocabulary replaces verbs with acronyms, and the door that was once a door becomes a decorative rectangle. What is the cost of this posture? It is not just missed opportunities, though there are many. It is the slow calcification of character. You become a curator of reasons, a collector of rationalizations, a careful archivist of all the times you were right that trying wouldn't matter. Your eyes adapt to the gloom and call it normal. You call it adulthood. You call it patience. Sometimes you call it stoicism, though stoicism has nothing to do with sedation. Stoicism, properly understood, is a fiery discipline of focusing effort where it can do the most good and refusing to lend your soul to what you cannot command. The mask you are wearing is not stoic calm. It is institutional fatigue. Marcus Aurelius, hunched over wax tablets in the dim light of a campaign tent, refused that mask. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wrote it because outside events were relentless. Disease in the ranks, intrigue in the capital, winter chewing at every supply line. He had no illusion that he commanded weather or war, but he knew he could command his posture toward both. Viktor Frankl, examining the inner life with a precision only survival can forge, said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." Between Marcus Aurelius and Viktor Frankl lies a bridge strong enough to carry you across learned helplessness, across control theater, across the convenience of systems that would prefer your obedience to your originality. Walk it. Begin by noticing the inner bureaucracy you have built in the image of the outer one. Do you hold monthly meetings in your head where a committee of doubts votes down your initiatives? Do you write policy memos to yourself that begin with "once things calm down," as if time were a department that could issue you a permit? Do you file every ambitious idea under "someday" and mark the status green because you looked at it again this quarter? You laugh, and then you recognize it. The rituals that stole your agency outside have been copied inside, complete with forms, compliance checks, and a quiet punishment regime for any impulse that risks disapproval. The first revolution is internal. Fire the counterfeit clerks. Suspend the policy that requires permission from moods. Replace the quarterly rhetoric with daily measurement. Ask a hard question you've dodged. When did you last see your action change a result you care about? Not a performance of action, not a meeting about action, but a quiet, boring deed that altered reality by an inch in your favor. If you cannot remember, the spell is deeper than you admitted. If you can remember, you already hold the thread you must pull. The smallest reliable win. The smallest reliable win is not motivational jargon. It is a specific, repeatable action that produces a modest, trustworthy result, independent of the institution's mood. It is a slow antidote to the random reinforcement that trained your nervous system to give up. What counts as a smallest reliable win? Sending one concise email that asks one question that forces a binary answer. Turning a meeting request into a written brief so ambiguity cannot hide. Reducing a 5-page form to the 4 questions you actually need answered and sending it back with the others marked NA. 15 minutes of uninterrupted deep work before the inbox opens, every day, without exception. A 500-calorie walk after lunch that lowers your afternoon anxiety by a measurable notch. 10 lines of code with tests. 1 invoice sent. 1 paragraph written. 1 phone call to a person who can say yes or no. Small enough to finish. Reliable enough to repeat. Concrete enough to track. Each one is a vote against helplessness, a tiny proof the system cannot erase because the proof lives in you. But what if the system punishes initiative? It might. That's what taught you to stop. So you run the playbook Marcus Aurelius would recognize. Control the controllable and build a cushion for what is not. You document your wins privately, so that when someone attempts to take credit or assign blame, you own the record. You choose trenches where small wins matter, customer conversations, prototypes, service delivery, rather than arenas where wins are symbolic. Brand language debates, prestige committees, applause metrics. You practice exit options in small ways before you need them in big ways. Freelance on the edges. Learn a tool that travels. Deepen a skill that earns outside your current chain of command. Helplessness shrinks each time you create a door the institution cannot lock. But what if my role is so boxed in that nothing I do matters? That is the most dangerous sentence you can speak without evidence. Test it. Identify one metric that would embarrass your team if it improved and your team did not notice. Time to response for customers, number of defects caught before release, cycle time from idea to test. Without asking permission, run a micro-experiment for a single week that moves the number by 5%. If it budges, you found a lever. If it does not, you learned something you can publish quietly to people who respect data. Either way, you break the trance. Effort can matter again. The mind, trained by unpredictability, will try to pull you back into the fog. It will whisper that small wins are cosmetic. It will ask for guarantees before effort. It will demand a plan for everything before the first step. That is control theater inside your skull. Replace it with process theater of your own, the kind that serves reality, not appearance. A daily stand-up with yourself or a partner, where you name one and only one smallest reliable win for the day. A 5-minute audit at dusk, where you write 2 lines, win achieved or win missed. If you missed, no speeches. You ask, what blocked it? Then schedule the exact moment. Tomorrow you will try again. The ritual is not for show. It is to reteach your nervous system the ratio between input and output. Institutional convenience thrives on your vagueness. It dies on your precision. When offered multiple bad options, refuse the framing with a sentence that converts the choice into a principle. I do not accept outcomes that satisfy the form but harm the result. I do not consent to deadlines set by publicity rather than readiness. I do not trade silent overtime for public gratitude. These sentences are not tantrums. They are coordinates. You speak them once to yourself, then once to the room. The room may not like them. That is not the measurement. The measurement is whether you act consistently with them tomorrow. Learn to translate warm phrases into cold terms. We'll do right by you becomes 10% of revenue wired by the 15th. We're a family becomes sick leave, vacation, and a non-retaliation clause in writing. Trust me becomes show me. Ambiguity is a hunting ground for manipulators and a sanctuary for cowards. It is also a greenhouse for learned helplessness, because nothing you do can be proved to have done anything. Precision is not rudeness. Precision is self-respect made legible. You will be tempted to wait for permission to begin. Ask yourself who profits when you wait, and who benefits when you act. When you act inside your circle of control, no one needs to sign off. When you decline the table where all options are bad, you simply stand up and leave. Isn't that risky? Yes. So was giving up. Frankl did not argue that choosing your attitude guarantees survival. He argued that choosing your attitude guarantees you remain a chooser. That is the core of agency. That is the muscle institutions cannot train for you and cannot afford to see you exercise if their convenience depends on your quiet compliance. A word about anger. The first time you realize how thoroughly you were trained to give up, rage will flare. It feels clean. It feels righteous. It is also bait. Rage gives institutions the excuse to label you unprofessional and continue as before. Marcus Aurelius would caution you, do not give your enemies a reason to ignore your reason. Convert anger into arithmetic. Where did the chain break? Which form wasted the most hours? Which signature stalls the most often? Which ambiguous phrase keeps costing you? Write the list, then choose one link and replace it with a tiny, measurable alternative. Rage burns hot and brief. Arithmetic builds a lever. Another word about cynicism. It looks like intelligence. It sounds like wisdom. It is often just helplessness wearing a suit. Cynicism lets you feel superior to the game you are losing. The antidote is not naivety. It is engagement with reality at the smallest scale, where effort still moves something. Frankl called this the last freedom. Marcus Aurelius called it the discipline of action. Both men would rather watch you fix the 10 meters of road in front of your house than hear you lecture on the global supply chain of asphalt. Build your own scoreboard. Public dashboards worship the wrong numbers and punish the wrong mistakes. Create a private ledger with 5 lines you can influence. Hours of deep work. Promises kept. Errors admitted within 24 hours. Deliverables shipped. Refusals to play in bad choice sandboxes. Measure weekly. The point is not to impress anyone. The point is to retrain your eyes to notice the link between behavior and effect under your control. The more you see the link, the more your nervous system believes again. Belief is not magic. It is a hypothesis about the future made from repeated observation. Practice exit in miniature before you need the full version. If a meeting runs on control theater, ask for the agenda and the decision at stake. If neither exists, decline politely and request minutes afterward. If a workflow produces compliance without results, propose a week-long pilot of a simpler version and track the difference. If a manager insists on bad options, add a third. Delay for data. If a policy forbids creativity, ask to see the clause. Sometimes the clause does not exist. Sometimes it does and needs to be changed. Sometimes neither happens, and you learn the real rule. Leave, not in fury, in clarity. The smallest reliable exit is the conversation where you say no without flinching, and the world fails to end. When unpredictability feels like a flood, your breathing is the last dry island. Slow it. Inhale for 4, hold for 2. Exhale for 6, hold for 2. Repeat until you can hear your own thoughts again. Then repeat Marcus Aurelius's line quietly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. The sentence is not a talisman. It is a checklist. Right now, do you control your posture, your next sentence, your calendar for the next hour, your willingness to ask for specificity, your courage to say no? Choose any two. Act. The act is small. The relief is not. Do not confuse small with easy. The smallest reliable win often demands more courage than grand plans, because small wins strip you of excuses. Grand plans can collapse from their own size and leave you dignified in the rubble. Small wins leave you face to face with the fact that you can move the world by a centimeter and chose not to yesterday. That sting is useful. It is information. It reminds you that helplessness is a policy you can repeal one action at a time. Now listen to the language you use around yourself. Do you say, the system made me? Do you say, they don't let me? Sometimes it's true. Often it's camouflage for fear. Replace they with I, wherever physics allows. I didn't ask. I didn't write it down. I didn't follow up. The sentence will hurt, then it will heal. Responsibility reopens doors that excuses painted shut. You will not fix an institution by yourself. You can fix the way you stand inside it. And if enough people stand differently, institutions become less convenient for apathy and more convenient for agency. They will adapt, or you will walk, and either outcome is a win, because either outcome returns your life to the realm where causes and effects can meet again. The spell of learned helplessness does not break with a speech. It breaks with a sequence. First, awareness without theater. I was trained by randomness to stop trying. Second, an internal revolution. Retreat from control theater in your head. to control of one deliberate action. Third, the practice of smallest reliable wins until your nervous system relearns the old language of cause and effect. Fourth, the conversion of warm words into cold terms whenever you engage with bureaucracies. Fifth, the courage to refuse multiple bad options and to insist on a third, better, design or a clean exit. Sixth, the habit of measuring what you can move and ignoring what you cannot, except to adjust your plan. Seventh, a quiet loyalty to the men who already walked this path. Marcus Aurelius advising your mind, Viktor Frankl squaring your shoulders. One last question only you can answer. If you knew that a single hour each morning spent on your smallest reliable win would, over a year, reopen your belief in effort by a measurable degree, would you start tomorrow? If the answer is yes, your mind has already begun to commute the sentence. If the answer is no, ask whether the convenience you currently enjoy is worth the price of spending your life near doors you could open and do not. Then write one sentence on a scrap of paper before you sleep. Tomorrow's win is washtingwas at washti for minutes. Put the paper on your desk. Put your phone in another room. Put your will where your reasons used to sit. Unpredictable punishment taught you that effort is pointless. Control theater taught you that appearance outranks results. Institutional convenience offered you multiple bad options and asked you to applaud while choosing. You are not an animal in a random maze. You are a man with the freedom to choose your attitude and your next deed. The door you keep calling locked is a test of whether you will touch the handle again. Touch it. If it opens, walk through. If it does not, find another. The smallest reliable win begins reversing the spell the moment you do.